Hello, friends. Welcome back to Trending. Today's Thursday, September 12th. A little bit later than usual today. It's getting close to 11 as we're recording. So, good morning, Joe. Almost good afternoon.
Yeah, how's it going?
Good. How are you today?
I'm doing okay. I got to work and I noticed I'm wearing like a navy top and khaki pants. I look like a Walmart employee today, man. I ought to just like walk in there and see if anybody tries to have me help them out or something.
Did you ever do the Best Buy challenge?
No.
That was a thing for a while. Wear a blue button up and khakis and just walk around and see if anybody asks you for help.
Can you do that with Target too? Because Target's got like red shirts.
Yeah.
Anyways.
Maybe if you have some free time today, just see what happens if you go to Walmart.
But do you remember the buckle challenge?
I do.
Because they were like aggressive with their greeting, right?
Yes.
So like on a calm day, like a Tuesday late afternoon, try to go to the buckle, touch the back wall, right? And try to get out before being like hounded.
Yes. I remember. I don't think I ever tried it, but I was familiar with that. When was the last time you've been to the buckle? There's one over at New Market. I don't think I've ever been to that one.
I don't suppose I've been in 25 years.
It was kind of the place a while ago.
It was. Always buzzing.
Yeah. It's been a while for me. Mm-hmm. Okay, well, this is not the buckle news or Target or Best Buy news. So
right.
We do our best to take what's happening in the pop culture and the news world and kind of take a faith spin at it. So it's kind of a different episode, Joe.
It is.
As always, there's probably a dozen things we could have talked about today, but you found an interesting study that you wanted to talk about. Yeah. So usually we do kind of more pop culture or news stuff. This one's going to be kind of more data driven because you got some kind of interesting stuff to show. So this is one of those weeks where I know a little bit of what we're going to talk about, but you've kind of got the main gist today. So why don't you take it away and tell us what we're talking about?
I'll do the best I can. Right, like trending tends to be a term for something that's like the buzz out there or in the zeitgeist.
Yes, there you go.
As you like to say.
We get our points for today.
Okay. But what about just trends themselves, like the data and stuff? Well, of course, there's as Christianity is one of the dominant religions in the Western world. It's obviously changing quite a bit here recently. There's all these outfits studying American life, religious American life. Yeah. And Barna does, a big study of some sort. Other sociologists, one that I really like is Ryan Burge. He is a sociologist. He actually teaches sociology at a university. He's also a pastor, and he's really easy to listen to. So I'll whenever the Holy Post has him on, I like to try to tune into that. Yeah. And so regularly we're getting these snapshots. Now that snapshot inevitably has moved, after they kind of get all the data together. Yep. But one just recently was published from the year 2023, so just about a year ago. Yep. They gathered data. They've got it all kind of in one place now. And so I want to talk about PRRI, which is one of these outfits. Means I'm going to have to look at my notes a lot. Sorry. But
which, by the way, you've got triple screen and some yellow paper there. You're ready to go.
This is bad. This is bad. I'm totally owned right now by devices and stuff. I won one of these as like a fundraising gift. So, anyways, I'm not just like spending money.
What I meant is you're prepared. You got facts and figures.
I don't know if this means I'm prepared. So, anyways, so let me go to the analog. So, the PRRI is the Public Religion Research Institute. It claims to be nonpartisan. It claims to be nonprofit. So they do have articles that they crank out, obviously supported by the data that they've received. So they're not just like sending a survey to somebody and taking their word for it. There is like a follow-up. And of course, they don't get to talk to everybody. Yeah. And of course, you get into the weeds. When they talk about a county in America, it's got X amount of thousands of people, but they only research from like, a handful of people, right? So it's obviously just a cross section. Yep. So we got to take that with a grain of salt. But this is what they've concluded. This is maybe the highlight of the study. This one from 2023. About 2/3 of the U.S. population considers themselves Christian now. Okay. It's down from years past. So that's 2/3 of Americans. They break that down. 4 out of 10 Americans are white Christians. And 2 out of 10 Americans are people of color Christians, okay? So then you drop that down a little bit out of the white Christians. Only 13% are evangelical. 13% are mainline Protestant. I think that should be surprising if people are following studies. Because I think the assumption is that evangelicalism is growing while mainline denominations are shrinking. But it doesn't seem to be the case. It seems to be like a kind of a flat line. 12% Catholic. And then the staggering number is this, though. They did this study in 2006. 57% of the U.S. population was white Christian. Today in 2023, it's only 41%. That's quite the drop. From just about 15 years or so. And then they've been tracking this group called the unaffiliated, called the nuns. I think that people are confusing when they hear nuns.
Yes,
they think of sister so-and-so, but just the NONES. So they call them unaffiliated. And that number has jumped quite a bit. So in 2006, unaffiliated people was 16% of American life. In 2023, it's now 27%. So I think we have to define unaffiliated. These are not atheists or agnostic, because people can't. They have the option to actually check those. And I think a lot of atheists, we are starting to seeing like second and third generation atheists in families. But a lot of atheists in our culture, they actually earn that, I think, the most honest way. Like they probably had a religion when they were younger. They've investigated religious claims when they emerge into adulthood, and so they've put their religious past behind, and now they would claim that they're atheists now because after their inquiry, right? But unaffiliated are just those who don't check anything, right? It's almost like no option is their preferred option. Does this mean these people are on a spiritual quest? I would wager not. I mean, I think we can't help but be on a spiritual quest, okay? Whether it be an atheist, agnostic, unaffiliated, or one of the variety of religions out there. And so I think I consider, like, what was it, 27%? So 1/4 of our society, they're on a quest. They're just not going to traditional religious institutions or irreligion as a place to find that. And so I think that this presents an interesting landscape for us in our world today. So that's the high level. So any response? I mean, are you surprised by any of these facts and figures?
I guess I'm not super surprised that a lot of those numbers are down in general. That's not super shocking, just from what we've seen in the news and headlines and just in our own experiences, right? I think that's kind of not too surprising. I guess I may be a little surprised that mainline evangelical and Catholic are basically even percentage-wise in America. Like, I guess I maybe wouldn't have guessed that necessarily. So we've been hearing about the rise of the nuns or the unaffiliated in recent years. So again, I'm not necessarily too surprised by that. So again, I think that's probably about what I would have expected, but I wouldn't have had all the numbers, obviously. So I think we chatted just briefly before we started recording. So I think this is all interesting. I think it's wise for church leaders to know this, because we need to know the culture that we're in and that we're trying to reach. And so I think it's helpful for us to have some of these facts and figures. Some people are going to be like nerds about this. They're going to be it'll be super helpful for them to have some specific numbers and charts and whatever. Some people maybe aren't necessarily driven by data or numbers as much, but whatever people watching are on that spectrum, like what would you say? Why is it important for us to know this, and why is this news noteworthy?
I just think that there's probably a couple things also in the study that are important. They concluded that if you're under the age of 50 in America, you're twice as more likely to be an unaffiliated person. So, church population is shrinking a bit, but it seems to be holding steady for the older generations of American life. When it comes to younger people, it's just not happening. So, and I think that if you're a grandparent out there, parent out there with adult kids, there's a good chance that maybe half of them or only a third of them are tracking with religion. I think I would be alarmed. I think it would crush me, because I'm a Christian dad. Like, I want my kids to be Christian. I think we're also seeing, and the other studies have highlighted this, that it seems to be maybe just a trend in modern religious experience, where you kind of get hauled to church as a family together. Kids, when they emerge into adulthood, they do take a hiatus away from regular attendance or experience at church. And some don't return, but some do return, to the point where a lot of faith leaders are trying to console, parents with aging kids, saying there's a chance that all of your kids that you're worried about right now, they do make their way back when they start to make their faith their own. Now, I have anecdotal, experiences with people here at Ridgepoint and other places I've been many times children don't come back verbatim to your church preferences.
Yeah.
And I think individuals need to just say, is that good enough? Is it good enough that they're attending somewhere, that they're applying their faith, even though it may not look like mine, even though we might disagree on some major, issues in regards to faith, theology, doctrine, social issues, and things like that, right? Yep. And so I just think that's an alarming trend. So if Plan B is Plan A again, what we've done the past 50 years, it just may not be effective. Now, we're talking about faith here, so strategy, effectiveness, return on investment, like those numbers fall short at some point.
Yeah,
I do think that they're important in our math of trying to plan for the future, but I just think that we can't imagine, like, copying and pasting, the stuff that we've done in the past. Is this going to be the thing that's going to help reach the crowd again? Yeah. I think long gone are the days where simply having enough churches in an area with open doors and well marketed is going to bring the community back. We do need to make an appeal to those who are unaffiliated and those who don't really have a previous experience of religion. Like I think that we have a great opportunity and to use our creative consciousness and imagination to try to figure out, okay, what can we do differently in the name of Jesus? I think the axiom kind of rings true. It's a timeless truth, but we have timely expressions of it. And so what does the next timely expression look like with this ever-changing landscape of religious life in America? One of the other trends, too, is that they say that African Americans and Hispanic Americans are more likely to identify as Christians than other racial categories. Yeah. And so if there was ever a moment for particularly white churches, predominantly white churches, to diversify, it's not just because it's the right thing to do. It's not just because Revelation 7:9 says that heaven is going to be very diverse, okay, and we should be an expression of that today. But if we can find a way to be more welcoming and accommodating to all different types of people, not just people who look exactly like us, there's a chance that we'll have vibrant communities because people from other racial categories are identifying as Christian more than white Americans are at this point.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah. So I have a couple kind of application-y type questions I want to get to, but for one more number, again, I don't want to just bore people with too many numbers, but I know you have some specific data about locally.
Yes.
So can you just, one more number, if you're getting tired of numbers, hang with us one more.
Yes.
And then I've got a couple applications. No, it's good. I think it's helpful. So one more number, and then let's get to some applications. So can you give people a heads up of Sedgwick County compared to nationwide?
You're right.
Some hot pockets?
That's great. So if you actually go to PRI, what's one of the cool things about this article is that there's an interactive part of it. You just kind of keep scrolling down. They take every county in America and they give a religious diversity score.
Okay.
What that means is for the residents in that county, how many options do they have?
Yeah.
And so you go to a place like San Francisco County, California, it's very high.
Okay.
A lot of people.
Lots of options for religious.
A lot of religious expression there. But if you go to a place like Holmes County, Mississippi, if you find that in the Mississippi map, you would find that there's either everybody goes to church or everybody does not go to church. Okay.
Yep.
So the national average is kind of around 0.75. Sedgwick County is actually 0.78. So we're actually closer to San Francisco County, way closer to San Francisco County, California, than we're in a place like rural Mississippi.
And again, that number might be a little bit confusing. Can you just explain that again? So that means we have a lot of religious diversity in Sedgwick County.
So closer to 1, more diversity. Closer to 0, less diversity. So we might assume that when you drive down 21st Street or Rock Road or Maze Road or any other big road here, if you drive Kellogg, you see churches everywhere. You think a lot of them are probably like the church that I go to, right? And a lot of people like me in this city go to church just like mine.
Yeah.
And it's just simply not the case. According to the latest PRI data, we are seeing a diverse expression of Christianity, but also there's many different faiths popping up in the city of Wichita, which I think this is an interesting trend. You've studied Christian subculture for a long time. Okay. You were in Colorado Springs, where it's one of the major manufacturing places for Christian culture, subculture in America, right? So there's a great book called God Gave Rock and Roll to You by one of my professors from Portland Seminary. And she studied particularly contemporary Christian music industry. And she said one of the things that tends to happen in Christian culture is it homogenizes, where you get a lot of musicians coming on the come up in the Christian world, but they're kind of coached to sound like everyone else.
Yeah.
So we have to admit, like there was an era of Christian rock where they all sounded like Creed.
Yes.
Because everybody seemed to love Creed, all right?
And U2. It was like Creed or U2. Like
That's
those
right.
Were the,
yeah. And any female Christian voice, they try to make her sound like Christina Aguilera or like one of these, female pop stars, right?
Yep.
This is interesting because I think churches do the same thing.
Yeah.
We tend to all play Red Rocks worship tunes or Hillsong.
Yeah.
One big church does one thing in their presentation style. A lot of
Yeah.
churches try to do the same thing. And we seem to think, we have this narrative, if we want to get ahead and, maybe grow our ministry a little bit, we've got to look like, the bigger ministry down the road.
Yeah.
I think what the PRI is suggesting, particularly in a place like Wichita with enough people, that we could be ourselves and live to tell of it.
Yeah.
We just got to figure out what God wants us to do uniquely as a congregation and a ministry.
Yeah.
And stick with it and trust God and trust the process. We could use, a
Basketball
sports trope,
terms.
right? Yeah. And I think that we won't feel like we're like an imposter to what our story was before, right? We just be ourselves and trust that there's more than enough people looking for something that we value, they probably value too. And they'll find us because people are eager in their search, I think, to find a place where they can belong.
Yeah.
And so I think that's an encouraging thing from the unique local number that we get through the PRI study.
Yeah. No, it's good. That's really helpful. We're going to probably run over time here. I'm going to give a couple things and
Okay,
we'll see
right.
where we can wrap up here.
Yep.
But so I think whenever we see these numbers, especially when like a lot of numbers are down, like when we hear that there's fewer evangelical Christians and there's kind of some, honestly, just kind of bad news for church folks, right?
Yeah.
A lot of things are down. The next thing is like, okay, what God is here and what can we do about it, right? I think a lot of that's not in the data. The data is just numbers, but within the data, what can we learn from this? What trends can we see? Whatever, right?
Yeah.
So that's what maybe that's one of the first things I think about is what got us here and how can we maybe help reverse this a little bit. So again, I'll try to keep this brief, but I think reflecting on just my 30 years in church land in the 90s and early 2000s, I think I can pinpoint two things that I think were really successful in the 90s and 2000s that I think aren't successful now. I'm curious if you would agree and if maybe that's part of what we're seeing here. So you mentioned the Christian music, the Christian movies. Like I think I came up in the era that was prime Christian culture.
Okay.
We had CCM music, we had VeggieTales, we had our own movies, we had everything. Like we had our own Christian radio was obviously huge, Christian magazines, Christian books. Like we had our own little world. And I think I think a lot of good can come out of that. Like I'm kind of a product of that era.
And you're all right.
Yes. I worked to focus on the family. I worked at a Christian bookstore. Like I was probably the CCM kid. I knew all the CCM bands. Yeah. And again, overall, I think it served me well. But I think we are maybe in a different season now where younger people, maybe especially younger people today, don't necessarily want a completely separate culture from the rest of their friends and from the world. They don't really want to have like a plan B. If you don't like this movie, here's a movie that's better for Christians. If you don't like this, if you want to listen to this band but you want a Christian, here's a Christian alternative. I think that era is maybe past, where a second culture is going to be beneficial to bring people to Jesus.
Yeah,
that's one thing.
Okay.
Another thing that I've been thinking about is, like, we were maybe the last era of like the revival. I mean, there's still revivals, but the Billy Grahams and the big tent revivals, and kind of come to this one-time event, bring your non-Christian friends to this one thing, they'll accept Jesus, and then they're going to be a Christian forever, right?
Right.
I think that was still a thing in the 90s and early 2000s. I remember I went to some of the Billy and Franklin Graham crusades, those were kind of the last of those eras. And
right.
I've recently had a few conversations with our friend Nasser.
Yes.
Who's been a, pastor and evangelist in the Middle East and kind of all over the world. And one thing I'm learning from him is that really effective evangelism, if you're talking to a Muslim or an American or whoever you're talking to, it's just a much slower process now. We can't really expect for there to be this one and done moment. Someone accepts Jesus and now they're on this new trajectory to follow Jesus the rest of their life.
Yeah.
Which I think there's kind of a moment in the 90s and 2000s where that was kind of a push, I think. And now I think it's probably a healthier approach, which is like, no, like if you really want to follow Jesus and understand what you're signing up for, play the long game. Like if you have a non-Christian friend who's not ready yet, that's okay. Like keep investing in them, be their friend, I think we're in this area where long term is going to beat the short run. So if I were to categorize the 90s and 2000s, what was successful then that maybe isn't so successful now, those are the first two things that come to my mind. What do you think about that?
Yeah, and I think that unfortunately, well, I don't know if that term would be welcome or not, but I think a lot of Christianity in the West, particularly since the 20th century, has thrived because there's always been an imminent crisis that the whole culture is concerned about.
Yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And people have honed the message of Jesus on the basis of a crisis, personal crisis, national crisis, global crisis. Billy Graham started his ministry in 1948, right after World War II. I wasn't around in World War II, but the sense that I get from historians that I've read and people who've shared, there was relief when World War II ended, but there was also anxiety, like maybe the world is like kind of put back together, but how long is it going to hold?
Yeah.
And it didn't take long for like threat of communism, and then like you had economic threats, right?
Yeah.
Then you had like quote unquote moral crises threats that have like kind of galvanized Western Christianity. But with the rise of postmodernity, a philosophical concept which says that there's not one meta narrative that everyone shares natively, but everyone's got their own narratives. There's not really a collective, people have tried, but there's not a collective narrative with a crisis within it to draw masses to anymore.
Yeah.
Right? And so what apologists have said and evangelists have said is in a postmodern world, which I don't use that term disparagingly. I just think it's acknowledging something that's apparent, okay? You have to win somebody's world before they can be won in their faith conversion soul, like enter in like your favorite term there, right? But I don't know if that's too different than what Paul did when he walked into Athens in Acts 17, a place littered with idols. He knew their poets, he knew their playwrights, and he just simply curated the good stuff, also the empty stuff, and then he used it and then he brought Jesus into the middle of that world. And he drew people to it. Now, not everybody accepted. Probably a quarter of people, responded. Some sneered at him. Many ignored him. But I think that was his form of evangelism. I just think that we're in that type of mode again. Totally. And what I love about it is that we are broadening the message of Christianity outside of crisis now, because God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son, right? This message is more than an individual crisis that I have. And I should be open to the Christian faith, not just because my life is falling apart, but because I want to make the most of it. Right? And I think that's one of the things for like pastor theologians now, is that we have a chance to make an appeal to the world around us when things are going pretty good for many people. Who easily resist the message of Jesus because, I've heard it, it's just a crisis-based religion. Now it's not, it's an opportunity-based religion. Opportunity to join what God's doing in the world around us. What He's doing in my life and through our lives. And so I think that's a neat opportunity that we have today, if we're willing to do the hard work, to maybe reframe what we value, what we say, what we invite people into. I think we can have an amazing opportunity.
Yeah, that's good. Whenever there's a challenge like this, there's always a chance to pivot and really reach people in a new way, which is great. So, okay, we're going a little bit long. Just if you want to just sum up, we've gone through a lot of numbers, we've covered a lot of ground. What do you want people to remember? What's your big takeaway from the study that you've been looking at?
So an aha moment for me, when I first became a Christian, the assumption that I had was that nobody was thinking religiously, that I needed to kind of wake them up, feed them questions to ask me so I can feed them the answers I already knew. I think what this study shows and what the spiritually open stuff that Barna's doing is simply this. People are open to having spiritual conversations. They're very articulate in what their longings are. And so like anything else, like Father Ted Lasso would say, we need to be curious, not judgmental. Start with what's going on in their life and see if you can't, like Paul, help curate what God might be up to in their life and then draw them to the revelation of Jesus. It'll take time, But these are people, man. They're not projects.
Yeah.
These are people. So I think we should imagine that a person to have real faith in their life should take some time. And we should be eager to engage in that work and not irritable about how things are changing in the world around us. So,
yeah. Well said. Totally agree. All right. That was good, man.
All right.
Kind of a different spin on things, but I love it. That's some good. I think that's good stuff we need to be aware of. So that's good. Thanks for bringing it to us today. Yeah. That's good. Yeah. Thanks to you for being with us today, for hanging in there on a different episode, and continuing our new Sabbath series that we're going through right now. So if you're around Wichita, we'd love to have you join us as we're talking about rest and rhythms and all those kinds of things. So love to have you on Sunday. We'll be back here next week.
Yep. See you next time.
Have a good one. See ya.